You thought awakening would be the end of the pain, that when the soul awakened, everything would finally make sense. But now, in silence, you bleed. It bleeds not in the body, but in the soul. A fine, invisible pain that cuts slowly. A kind of sacred emptiness that only those who have felt it can describe. Do you feel that way too? Rumi said, "The wound is the place where the light enters you, but no one prepared you for what comes after the light. Because sometimes the light enters, and it still hurts. Awakening is not floating, it's falling back into yourself. It's looking at everything you've avoided for years, and realize that the soul does not forget what the ego tried to bury. Have you ever felt something inside you change, but does the world around you remain the same? As if your heart had woken up, in a still tired body. As if the soul had returned, but still without a home. The soul awakens, but it still bleeds. It bleeds every time you try to explain this pain, and no one understands. You bleed when you move away from the one you love, so as not to lose yourself. It bleeds when you realize that silence has become your only shelter. It's like you've stepped through a portal, and now there was no turning back. You can't pretend anymore. You can't run anymore. You can't distract yourself anymore. Everything echoes. Everything touches. Everything is deeper. What was once bearable now hurts. What was once normal now suffocates. Because it's not the same anymore. Your soul saw something, felt something. It woke up, but it didn't heal. And maybe no one around you realizes it. Maybe you will continue smiling, working, existing, but inside, there is a tear that never falls. A silent, sacred scream that accompanies you in the silence of the night. Have you ever had the feeling that no matter how much you grow, is there still a part of you that's stuck? Back there, in an unresolved trauma, in a word that hurt, in a hug that never came, in a love that left you. The soul feels, the soul keeps, the soul bleeds, and even when you try to follow, meditate, pray, seek, it seems like the spiritual wound is always there, throbbing, remembering that behind the awakening there is a crossing, and it's not always light, it's not always pretty. But do you know what's most painful? It's the world applauding you for having changed, while you feel like you're falling apart inside, because no one sees the soul when it is in process. No one understands the depth of silent healing. No one hears the silent cry of the awakened soul. But here, you can be real. Here, you can breathe. If this video reached you, it is not by chance. Perhaps your soul has guided your steps here. Maybe deep down, you just wanted to hear someone say, "I understand this pain that no one sees," because this pain is real. And contrary to what they made you believe, to feel it is not weakness. Bleed in silence is not failure. It's part of the path. You're exactly where you are supposed to be, even if it still hurts, even if it still bleeds. Because now that the soul has awakened, she doesn't go back to sleep. But maybe what you still don't understand, it is because this pain is still there. And that's what we need to talk about. But maybe what you still don't understand, it is because this pain is still there. And that's what we need to talk about. Because there is a type of pain that has no name. She doesn't scream, she doesn't bleed visibly. It just settles in, there, deep in the chest, and it begins to occupy spaces that were previously full of dreams. It is the pain of the invisible, the one that nobody notices, the one you learn to disguise, the one you ignore during the day, but that comes back every night, when the world falls silent. Maybe you're experiencing this right now, trying to show strength, trying to move on, trying to do everything right, but inside your soul just wants a place where it can simply exist without hiding. This pain didn't come out of nowhere. She is made of pieces, of silent rejections, of abandonments disguised as affection, of unfulfilled promises, of loves that only knew how to hurt. Do you feel like you're always giving, and yet you're still empty? Why does it seem like the world doesn't see you when you need it most? Why is it so easy for others not to see your pain? Maybe you've never said it out loud, maybe you've never written, but if this video touched something inside you, comment below. My soul feels, even when no one sees. He writes, it's not just a comment, it's a reminder that you still feel, that you are still here, that your pain deserves to be heard. And if this video made sense to you, if it touched something that no one else could touch, leave a like, subscribe, not for me, but for you, to continue listening to what your soul so desperately asks for: truth, depth, healing, because the journey of the awakened soul is just beginning, and sometimes all she needs, it's not walking alone. Now take a deep breath and listen to me with an open heart, because what comes next could completely change the way you understand your pain. You feel as if you've evolved spiritually, as if you've undergone a profound, almost mystical awakening. Sometimes it even seems like you understand more about life, about love, about silence. But deep down, really deep down, there's still something weighing you down. A subtle ache, almost imperceptible to outsiders, but which you carry like a constant whisper within your chest. Something that insists on repeating itself, even after so many healings, so many prayers, so many retreats, as if your soul has awakened, but your body is still trapped in an unresolved past. Maybe you're feeling this right now, a kind of disconnect between what you understand clearly and what still hurts you without explanation, as if you've found some answers, but still remain trapped in silent questions, as if you've already traversed the dark night of the soul, but now live in a gray dawn, where light is timid and hope cautious. This is the pain that almost no one talks about, the pain that comes after awakening. Yes, awakening is not the end of the journey. It is the beginning of the real confrontation. Because when the soul awakens, it doesn't just bring light, it also brings to light everything that was hidden in the shadows. All the unresolved traumas, all the denied memories, all the emotional wounds you swore you'd already overcome. It's as if your consciousness has grown, but so have your pains. You see more, feel more, perceive more, and with this heightened sensitivity, even the smallest gesture of rejection hurts as if it were abandonment. Even someone's silence becomes a mirror of their emptiness. Even a compliment can seem like a pretty lie to hide disinterest. And nobody understands. Nobody notices. Because on the outside, you look more centered, more spiritual, more at peace. But inside, your soul still screams. Not with words, but with deep silences. With longings that have no name. With anxieties that you don't know where they come from. This is the invisible problem. The pain of not being understood, even after having evolved. The pain of realizing that the spiritual path didn't take you away from the pain, but made you more aware of it. Because now, every wound speaks louder. Every unresolved relationship comes back to the surface. Every old emotional pattern begins to repeat itself with cruel clarity. You feel like you're always giving, always trying to love better, be better, understand more. But in the end, it keeps coming back to the same place: emptiness. That feeling that no matter how much you grow, there's still something missing. It still hurts. It still bleeds. And the most disconcerting thing is that you no longer know how to explain what you're feeling. It's not sadness. It's not depression. It's not anger. It's a subtle mix of all these things. It's like missing yourself. A pain that comes from the fact that your soul has changed, but the world around you hasn't. You start to walk away. From friends, from the family, from noisy places, from superficial conversations, because everything that is shallow starts to hurt you. And it's not out of spiritual arrogance. It's because now you see, you feel it. You hear things that others don't hear, perceives truths hidden between the lines. It captures energies that no one admits are there. You start living between two worlds, the world of matter and the world of the soul. And this space between the two is called spiritual solitude. A sacred solitude, yes, but still solitude. You feel out of place, as if you no longer belonged in the places that once made you feel good, as if he no longer fit into the relationships where he once felt loved, as if his language were now different, slower, more sensitive, more silent. But nobody speaks that language anymore. You even try to adjust, try to go back to being who you were, try to fit into the old emotional clothes, but they are no longer useful because your soul has grown. And with this growth came a price, the constant feeling of being alone even when surrounded by people. This is the wound that few see, the wound of the sensitive spiritualist, the wound of the awakened being that still carries the weight of the old existence, the wound of someone who understands the divine, but is still hurt by the human. And maybe at this moment you are thinking, why does it still hurt if I'm already awake? The answer is closer than it seems, and deep down you already know. But before we go any further, I want to ask you something. If this video spoke to your soul, if you somehow saw yourself in these words, comment below. I feel what no one sees. Not as just any rant, but as a silent reminder. You are not alone. Other souls feel what you feel. And the journey, as painful as it may seem, is taking you exactly where you need to go. Now, breathe. Because what comes next may be the answer your soul has been waiting for a long time. The pain after awakening is real, and perhaps even deeper than any pain you've ever felt before. Because what awakened you was the truth, not the pretty, easy-to-digest truth, full of comforting promises, but the raw, silent truth that tears apart illusions one by one, leaving you face to face with what you've avoided for years. The pain of the soul doesn't come from something new. It comes from what has always been there, hidden, stifled, forgotten. And now that you can no longer pretend, now that your consciousness no longer fits into the same skin, you feel everything, absolutely everything. Rumi wrote, "You have to keep breaking your heart until it opens." Oi, but what he didn't say is that in the process you will shatter yourself many times. You will look in the mirror and not recognize yourself. You will miss who you were, even knowing that you was asleep. You will long to return to the time when everything was simpler, even if it was also more superficial, because depth has a price, and that price is the pain of seeing clearly what you could previously ignore. Awakening is like opening your eyes in a dark room and little by little, beginning to see the mess that was hidden in the shadows. It's realizing how much pain you've swept under the spiritual rug, how many wounds you've disguised with pretty words, how many truths you've suppressed to maintain relationships, social roles, and false images. And now that the soul has decided to speak louder than the ego, you can no longer pretend not to hear. This is where the spiritual root of pain begins. It's not punishment, it's not failure, it's revelation. Your soul is simply showing you everything that needs to be seen so that it can finally be free. Because there is no true healing without exposure. There is no liberation without first facing the prison you yourself built. With fears, traumas, expectations, and silences, you start to notice the patterns. How you repeat the same choices, even knowing where they'll lead. How you're drawn to the same wounds disguised as people. How you sabotage yourself every time you're close to experiencing something real. And it hurts, because now you see, you understand, but you still don't know how to get out of it. You still don't have the tools. You still feel too fragile to change. And then the pain grows. Not because you're making mistakes, but because you are, finally, feeling with awareness. This is the difference between those who are awake and those who are still asleep. The awake feel everything. Every small rejection. Every unspoken word. Every dry gesture, every subtle absence. It's as if the soul has become skin, and the world, a field of amplified sensations. You can no longer laugh at the same jokes, or pretend everything is okay just to keep the peace, or accept the bare minimum just to avoid being alone. Because now you know. You know what you deserve. You know what hurts. You know what you're doing to yourself. But knowing doesn't stop the pain. Quite the contrary. Knowing expands. And with it the impact of the wounds also expands. What was once just discomfort now becomes anguish. What was once irritation now becomes deep sadness. And you begin to wonder, am I becoming more sensitive or just more truthful? The answer is both. Because truth and sensitivity go hand in hand. The awakened soul feels more, not because it's weak, but because it has shed its armor, that emotional protection that prevented everything from entering, and also everything from leaving. Now there's no more blockage. What touches, penetrates. What hurts, bleeds. And that's scary, because no one prepared you for this. No one told you that evolving spiritually could hurt more than remaining unconscious. That's why so many people retreat. They close their eyes again. They try to return to their old selves. They seek comfort in distraction, in excess, in superficiality, because feeling deeply requires courage. And the soul, when awakened, no longer accepts emotional crumbs. It wants the truth, even if that truth costs stability, even if it unravels relationships, dismantles beliefs, destroys masks. This is the spiritual root of pain. The soul does not hurt because it made a mistake. It hurts because it woke up, and now, she needs to deal with everything that was dormant inside her. Maybe that's why you're so tired, so emotionally drained, so introspective. It's the weight of your conscience hitting your body. It's your soul asking for space, asking for truth, asking for time. And you feel it. You feel it in your chest, in your shoulders, in your shallow breaths. It's not physical, it's energetic, it's spiritual. And at this moment you need to remember, feeling is not retreating. Feeling is moving through. And moving through is the only path to true healing. The kind that doesn't come from outside. That doesn't depend on anyone. That arises from the deepest silence between you and your soul. If you've made it this far in this video, it's because your soul asked for this moment. And if something inside you was touched, write it down below. My pain is also sacred. This phrase isn't just an expression. It's a commitment to truth, a reminder that your pain has a purpose, and that what's coming isn't the end. It's the beginning of something deeper and truer. What no one told you is that awakening doesn't heal, it reveals. It reveals what you've avoided, what you've repressed, even what you thought you'd forgiven but still throbs inside like a barely healed wound. Awakening doesn't come with a manual, nor with promises of instant peace. It doesn't bring ready-made answers or shortcuts to happiness. Awakening returns you to yourself, and that in itself can be terrifying, because truly finding yourself again means looking your own pain in the eye. It means facing everything you'd rather keep hidden beneath layers of spirituality, apparent strength and forced resilience. True healing isn't the end of pain, it's intimacy with it. It's allowing pain to stop being an enemy and start being seen as a messenger, because it has something to say. It always has. But you silenced it. You denied it. You learned to swallow your tears, to move on, to pretend everything was okay even when your soul was screaming inside. And now life has brought you to this point, a point where you can no longer lie to yourself, a point where the only way out is to dive in. There's no point in trying to rid yourself of pain before listening to it, before understanding what it wants to convey, before letting it breathe. Because only what is accepted can be transformed. And that's where the hidden key lies. That spiritual secret no one taught you. Most people seek healing as if they were trying to erase something unwanted. But healing isn't forgetting. Healing is presence. Healing is space. Healing is the courage to stay where it hurts, not to suffer more, but to stop running away. The soul only aligns with the light when the shadow is integrated. Denying the shadow perpetuates suffering, because everything you don't accept in yourself continues to control you, continues to sabotage you, continues to shape your relationships, your choices, your worldview. Ignored pain becomes a cycle. It becomes a pattern. It becomes a prison. But when you decide to sit with your pain with reverence, with listening, with openness, something begins to change. Not magically, but profoundly. It's in that moment that suffering begins to dissolve, not because it disappears, but because you no longer fight it. You understand it, you embrace it, and it's in this welcoming space that true healing happens. A silent, slow, organic healing. One that doesn't show itself in stories, that doesn't need external recognition, but that transforms everything from within. What no one told you is that spiritual pain is a portal, an invitation to a more intimate reconnection with your essence. And this invitation cannot be outsourced. No one can cross this bridge for you. The masters, the books, the meditations, they all point the way. But the dive is yours alone. And only those who accept that pain is also part of the journey will dive. As long as you keep trying to escape pain, it will continue to haunt you. As long as you keep asking life to spare you from what is difficult, you will remain far from what is true. Because the soul doesn't want comfort. The soul wants truth. And truth sometimes requires crossing the desert, alone, in silence, with your heart in your hands. But there's something powerful about it, because every step you take in this desert makes you more whole, more sensitive, more real. You begin to realize you no longer need to pretend, no longer need to fit in, no longer need to emotionally abuse yourself to maintain relationships that don't nourish you, because now you listen to yourself, and that in itself is healing. You begin to breathe differently, respond differently, choose differently, not out of obligation, but because something inside you has changed. something that can no longer bear to betray itself. The hidden key to healing is this: allowing yourself to feel, without running away, without judging, without rushing. It's giving the pain the time it needs to fully reveal itself, because only when it reveals itself can you finally transform it. And transforming isn't erasing. It's transmuting. It's turning pain into a bridge, not a wall. It's using it as a tool for connection, not isolation. It's understanding that every tear that fell cleared a piece of your vision. Every silence you endured sharpened your inner hearing. Every absence that hurt brought you closer to yourself. This is how the soul expands, not by avoiding what hurts, but by going through what no one wants to feel. Light doesn't come to erase the darkness. It comes to illuminate what you need to see. And perhaps now it's time to stop asking for the pain to go away and start asking what it came to teach you. What inside you still needs to be heard? What inside you still begs for acceptance? What part of you is still waiting for you to come back and say, "I see you"? Maybe your pain isn't a sign of weakness. Maybe it's just a reminder that your soul is alive, that you still feel, that you're still here. And if you got this far, if you read every word with an open heart, if something inside you was touched by this dive, comment below. My wound also wants to be heard. Write this as a pact, as a silent declaration that you're ready to stop running, that you choose to feel with truth, with courage, with presence, because only then does pain cease to be a prison and become liberation. Maybe you're exactly at that point right now, in that inner place where everything seems to have changed, yet you still don't know how to live this new version of yourself. A silent, solitary place where you can no longer pretend you don't feel, can no longer adapt to environments that once seemed comfortable, can no longer ignore the calls of your soul, but you also don't know exactly how to walk in peace. It's like being between two worlds, the old, which no longer serves you, and the new, which is not yet clear. You meditate, pray, breathe deeply. You read healing phrases, repeat mantras, light incense. You seek answers in books, in videos, in the words of others. But deep down, even with all this knowledge, even with all these practices, you still feel broken, fragmented inside, as if something were missing, or as if you'd lost parts of yourself along the way. And this is where many people get confused. They think this feeling is a sign of failure. They think they're regressing, that they made a mistake, that they didn't do the right thing in the spiritual process. But the truth is, it's not failure. It's transition. It's crossing the space between the old identity and the new consciousness. And this space is often uncomfortable. Before, when the soul was still asleep, everything was more numb. The pain existed, of course, but it was muffled by distractions, by excess, by masks, by narratives you created to survive. Now with the soul awakened, the pain reveals itself. It surfaces naked, raw, undisguised, and you feel it all with an intensity that sometimes seems unbearable. This is the moment when many give up. They try to go back to sleep. They try to hide again. They try to convince themselves that it's better to live numb than to feel everything that's coming to the surface. But something inside you knows there's no going back. You've seen too much. You've felt too much. You've been through too much. And even if you still don't know the way, even if you still feel lost, you know that this place you are now is part of the process. Maybe you're experiencing this right now. Maybe you're trapped in a relationship that's already left you, even if the person is still by your side. Maybe you already understand that it's over, that exchange no longer nourishes you, that bond is no longer alive. But you still stay, out of fear, guilt, habit. And it's not the end that hurts. It's your resistance to accepting that it's over. It's this attempt to keep alive what's already dead that bleeds inside you, because the soul has already let go, but the ego still holds on. Or maybe you're facing an absence. Someone left. A cycle has closed. A phase has ended. And no matter how much you tell yourself that you understand, that everything's okay, that it was necessary, deep down, something inside you still cries. It's not just for the person or the situation. It's for the version of you that's gone with them. It's for the part of you that existed only in that context and that now needs to die so another can be born. These transitions are the most painful because they don't just involve external events, they involve your deepest identity. When a soul awakens, it realizes that it's not life's events that hurt. It's the meanings you attribute to them. And changing those meanings requires a frightening surrender, because you'll have to let go. You'll have to relinquish control. You'll have to allow the pain to come. You'll have to face your emptiness without trying to fill it urgently. But this is spiritual growth. This is maturity of the soul. It's understanding that pain isn't a sign of error, but of truth emerging. It's realizing that you're not broken. You're rebuilding. And rebuilding doesn't follow a straight line. It's chaotic, slow, silent. Sometimes you'll seem more distant, more introspective, more strange to others, but it's because something inside you is being reorganized. You're discovering a new way of existing, a new way of loving, a new way of being you. And in this process, there's no magic formula. There's no set script. There's only one daily choice: to remain open-hearted, even when everything inside you wants to close. To remain listening to your soul, even when the whole world screams for you to go back to the way you were before. To remain present in the pain, the doubt, the emptiness, because you know it's all part of the healing. Before, your soul was asleep, and your pain was numb. You distracted yourself, adapted, survived. Now your soul is awake and the pain is revealed. And this, as uncomfortable as it may seem, is a blessing, because only what is ready to be healed is revealed. The pain that reveals itself is the pain that no longer accepts being hidden. It wants to be transformed, and for that, it needs you, whole, present, sincere. If everything you've heard so far makes sense to you, if you somehow recognize yourself in this silent journey between pain and consciousness, comment below. I'm in transition, but I remain open-minded. Write this sentence with truth, because writing is declaring, and declaring is assuming, and assuming is the first step toward liberation. Your journey is unfolding exactly as it should, and even though it hurts, it's taking you back home, the home that's always been within you. You're not regressing, you're simply feeling, with greater awareness, what has always been there within. What was once a quiet noise has now become a clamor. What you once managed to ignore with distractions now screams within your chest, even when everything is silent. And this, although it may seem like a step backward, is actually a leap. An internal leap, invisible to the world, but profoundly transformative, because only those who have had the courage to awaken feel deeply. Only those who no longer have the strength to pretend they don't feel can hear what hurts. Only those who have realized that the path to healing doesn't pass through it but passes through it. This point in the journey is confusing, because it seems like the more you know yourself, the more sensitive you become, more exposed, more fragile, more touched by everything. But this isn't fragility. It's refined sensitivity. It's your emotional, spiritual, and energetic system learning to operate on another level. A level where the armor no longer fits, where the masks weigh you down, where the old emotional shields that protected you from the world now distance you from yourself. You are awakening. And awakening is this: an invitation to live without the anesthetics that once kept you asleep. Rumi said, "Don't be content with stories of how things happen to others. Awaken your own legend." And that's exactly what's happening. You're no longer trying to replicate other people's models. You're no longer seeking ready-made formulas. You're, for the first time, facing your own story with the eyes of truth. You're revisiting old chapters and re-signifying scenes that were trapped in time. You're recognizing where your pain began, where your voice was silenced, where your essence was distorted to fit in. This shift in consciousness isn't something that happens all at once. It unfolds in layers. You realize you no longer feel comfortable in certain environments, that some conversations sound hollow, that certain companions drain your energy rather than nourish it. You begin to be silent by choice, not out of repression. You begin to say no firmly, not out of guilt. You begin to understand that self-preservation isn't selfish, it's spiritual self-care. It's at this point that you reconnect with your soul, not as something abstract, but as a living presence within you. A presence that whispers intuitions, that manifests through your emotions, that moves when you allow it. And when this connection begins to happen, external reality also begins to shift, because your frequency shifts. And everything that no longer resonates with this new vibration naturally moves away. It may feel like loss, but it's liberation. It may feel empty, but it's space being created for something new. A shift in consciousness is when you understand that pain is not an obstacle on the path, it is the path itself. It's when you begin to look at your wounds with reverence, not shame. It's when you stop asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and start asking, "What is this trying to show me?" It's when you realize that every suffering you've experienced has brought you closer to yourself, that every fall was an invitation to dive deeper, that every silence was an opportunity to listen to something only your heart could hear. You begin to walk differently, with more presence, with more lightness, with more purpose. Not because everything is resolved, but because you no longer need answers to allow yourself to live. The pain remains, yes, but now it comes with meaning, with learning, with truth. And that changes everything, because when pain gains meaning, it transforms into strength. When pain is crossed with presence, it becomes wisdom. When pain is accepted as part of the journey, it ceases to be an enemy. Right now, you may be experiencing ruptures, silent goodbyes, endings that hurt more than words can explain. But maybe this isn't the end. Maybe it's the beginning of your truth, because only when everything breaks can the soul choose what it truly wants to rebuild. And maybe what you're feeling right now is precisely that. Your soul choosing to leave behind what doesn't honor it, choosing to break out of the cycle of repetition, choosing finally to live whole. Your shift in consciousness doesn't need to be understood by everyone, nor accepted. It just needs to be honored by you, because no one else lives inside your skin. No one else hears the conversations you have with your soul in the middle of the night. No one else knows the weight and lightness that coexist within you. And that's why you no longer need approval. You need presence. Presence with yourself, presence with your pain, presence with your truth. This presence is what transforms. It's what creates space for the new. It's what makes the journey possible. And maybe, just maybe, this pain you feel now is the fertile soil where your new self is being planted. A more conscious self, more sensitive, more real, freer, not free from pain, but free from illusion, free from the need to hide, free from the obligation to fit in, free to live with your soul exposed, even if it hurts. And this alone, is sacred. If you are at this point in your journey, if something inside you recognized itself in these words, write here in the comments, "My soul is awakening to my truth." Write as an anchor, as an internal confirmation. Because when you express what you feel, you not only connect with other souls who also feel it, you also strengthen your own presence. And it's this presence that will sustain you in the next step. If you've made it this far, it's because something inside you recognized this truth. Perhaps your soul heard something that had long been asking to be heard. And if this video has kept you going this far, then you already know. This isn't about feigning strength. It's about allowing yourself to feel. It's not about ignoring the pain. It's about moving through it with courage, with awareness, with presence. Here, we don't run away from pain. We transform it into light. If this message touched your heart, subscribe to the channel to continue this journey with me. Because each video is another step on this path of healing, awareness, and truth. Leave a like if you truly felt this spoke to you. Your gesture supports this message and allows it to reach more souls who are also bleeding in silence. And now, watch the next video that appears here on the screen. It's the continuation of this journey. Your soul deserves to follow. She's already awake. Now she just needs to walk.